Friend, Shabbat Shalom again to you. And I meant what I said. Every one of you is very special to me tonight. And if you come next week, I'm going to say the same thing. If you came last week, I'd say the same thing, because you are. Without you being here, there's no service, and so you're keeping things going, and I appreciate it, and I think the Jewish people appreciate it. In moments of hardship and crisis, it's not always easy to hold our dignity. When we do that, we are showing extraordinary courage and nobility. A story is told by Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, who was the Misadir Kedushin at our wedding, the person who officiated at Jane and I when we got married many years ago. And Rabbi Riskin spoke about the dignity and nobility of his sextant in his former congregation, Lincoln Square Synagogue. The sexton's name was Gedalia Klein, and I just have to clarify what a sexton is. In the Hebrew, it's called Gabbai, and it's a person who assists in the running of the synagogue service. The role may be undertaken on a voluntary basis. A sextant in Hebrew is the person who kind of makes things happen. Sometimes we call them the shamas. They're just the person who kind of makes things happen. They light, if there's yurtzeit, lights they light it. If the Torah needs to be rolled, they roll the Torah. When I was a kid in Troy, New York, we'd come to religious school and we'd have milk and cookies. He'd put the milk and cookies out. But my mother never allowed me to have the milk and cookies. That explains a lot about me. We'll get into why she didn't, but that's not for Shabbat. So Mr. Klein, Rabbi Riskin Sexton, was in a Nazi forced labor camp. And he often was the prisoner's representative, and he often confronted the Germans. The German overseers exercising their twisted version of justice. Now, what distinguished Mr. Klein from other prisoners was his determination to seek justice even in living hell. He would look his guards in the eye and in no uncertain terms let them know that what he thought of their particular ruling. And there was kind of really arbitrary torture. And we can talk about it and you can read about it. It's horrific. And one day, a guard said to him, "Jew, who do you think you are? Aren't you afraid that at any moment I could kill you as easily as a fly?" Mr. Klein answered without hesitation, "In your army, the army of the Third Reich, you may be a lieutenant. But in my army, the army of God, I am a general." Is that incredible? Let me read that again. In your army, the army of the Third Reich, you may be a lieutenant. But in my army, the army of God, I'm a general. That is faith. That is chutzpah. That is holiness. What was he really trying to say? Not that the Jews were powerful, but that all people, regardless of their circumstances, were bestowed by God with a sense of human dignity and worth, which is absolute, which is unbreakable. No mortal, no matter how powerful, can take that away, and it doesn't matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter. We all have this absolute, unbreakable sense of human dignity and worth. It is really an application of the insight of Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor, who says, this is an incredibly often quoted statement, but it's worth stating many times, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. In any situation, we define the rules of the moment. We determine where we stand, who we are, what we believe. No one can take that away from us. And this idea is illustrated in the Torah in a very interesting insight if you read the Torah literally and not read it by translation. We have the aging patriarch Jacob is brought by Joseph to meet Pharaoh of Egypt. Pharaoh is the ruling monarch of the world, really, whose subjects hail him as God in human form. The story is extremely dramatic. Joseph, the great-grandson of Abraham, is a simple shepherd, saves the world from hunger by becoming the second most powerful Egyptian leader. And when Pharaoh learns that Joseph has a father in Canaan, his response is amazingly gracious. You know, when we read the book of Exodus, Pharaoh is the worst person in the world. But in the book of Genesis, a different Pharaoh has a certain sense of kindness, of compassion. Listen what he says. He hears that Joseph has a father. The news reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers have come. And Pharaoh and his courtiers were pleased. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do as follows, load up your beast and go at once to the land of Canaan. Take your father in your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall live off the fat of the land." Pharaoh says, "Come on down. I'm going to treat your family and the Israelites as honored guests. No one will be treated better." The moment arrives for Joseph to introduce his father, an old, supposedly unsophisticated Hebrew man, to Pharaoh. I think of this like old Jewish guy that's like eats knishes all day, but that's not Jacob. That's not Jacob. He's this older man, and it's not hard to imagine that Joseph is nervous. What will Pharaoh think of him? And the Torah tells us what transpires. Joseph brought his father and presented him to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How old are you?" And Jacob replied, "My journey through life has lasted 130 years. And the days of my life have been few and hard. I did not live as long as my father did in the days of their journeys." And with that, Jacob blessed Pharaoh again and left his presence. Let's go back to the second verse that I read. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Now, what's going on here? Certainly, Joseph had warned his father, "You are meeting the most powerful man in the world. Everyone thinks he's God. Can you go along with this?" Jacob, the old man, is not impressed. He's not impressed with the court. He's not impressed with the majestic display of regality. And even before Pharaoh has a chance to acknowledge this shepherd, Jacob blesses Pharaoh. Pharaoh hasn't even said a word, and Jacob blesses Pharaoh. Jacob wants Pharaoh to know up front. Maybe Egyptians think that he is their God. But Jacob is the son of Abraham and Isaac, and it is through them that all the nations will be blessed. Jacob is a general in the army of God. Now, we live in a world where we are impressed by power and might and fame. Our young people look at sports figures and actors and hip-hop musicians as godly. Now, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm getting at. They are role models, but are they really? The Generation Z, who's a Generation Z here? Veronica, I don't even think, are you? No, your generation, she's Generation Alpha. You should be proud of your alphahood. I have no idea what it means, but take it as a compliment. So the Generation Z takes social media influences seriously. Through their artificial fame, these influencers affect the purchasing decisions of their followers. The more followers, the more influence. I don't understand influencers. I'm just reporting to you. It makes absolutely no sense. But people listen to them because they have followers. And they have power because they have followers. It makes no sense. Now, some Americans today pledge allegiance to politicians who convince them that they have unique powers to fix society. Thus, their power comes from the leader, not the other way around. We anoint people as secular messiahs instead of questioning their so-called wisdom. And we adults and we Jews and everybody else are victims to this. People like to hobnob with the rich and famous and to dream what it would be like to be like them. For example, many of us would like to have lunch with Warren Buffett. How many people would like to talk to Warren Buffett? I would. But I have to tell you, he loves McDonald's and drives a 2001 Lincoln Town Car. He's not a god. He's a very smart man, but he's not God. So what do we learn from Jacob? That each of us has nobility and dignity, and given to us by God that ennobles us and tells us that we can stand up to any even self-created gods. They can be German overseers or Egyptian pharaohs or social media stars. Judaism's message is rooted in a deep humanism. We are all kings and queens. We all have unique value, all our own. It's this unique spirit that each of us are by definition part of an elite because we are created in the image of God. Everyone is human. No one is better than anyone else. All of us have equivalent value, rights, and responsibilities. Jacob offers an incredible roadmap to self-affirmation. May this message of human dignity and infinite worth of all of us inspire us. Each of us is important and powerful, and we need to claim it. Shabbat Shalom.